Hey guys, what's up? It's Darkmick here and welcome back to another video. Today we're covering off the BFA, the Battle for Azeroth Q&A, the Allied Race intro quests, and what's gone on around the pre-order this morning. So before I get started, the real MVP, the 100% #1 highlight from the Q&A was Ian Windrunner. Hands down, stole the show. Outstanding. I don't know if that's been there before, but it's the first time I've seen it and I was blown away. So getting into the actual content of the video, the pre-order is up and let's face it, it was a huge cock up this morning. The queue, I get there is going to be a hell of a lot of traffic. The issue came when getting to the end of the queue. MasterCard payments weren't working, Visa card payments weren't processing, and I ended up having to use PayPal. And even when I used PayPal to pay for it, the screen said we're still conducting business after half an hour, and it wasn't until I checked my emails to see that PayPal had processed the payment that I'd found out it had gone through. I then closed Battle.net, opened it up, and I had BFA sitting there. Well, the pre-order had gone through anyway. Now, I get huge amount of traffic coming in. I really get the stress on the servers and all of that kind of stuff. But how long have we been doing this for now? We should probably be better at handling these kind of things now. So that turned out to be a small issue in comparison to sort of what was going on in the background at the same time. And that was that our characters had all vanished. And I thought this may have been due to Blizzard trying to implement the new 4 character slots to each realm. And this may be the case. But the one thing it did do is it completely cucked Mythic Cache Morning. Really not cool. So, you know, we eventually got our toons back, and then the servers crashed, and then our characters vanished, and then the servers came back up, and then they vanished again, and then we got in, and then the servers crashed, and then you finally sort of got to start going through that content. So if you've done the Allied race quests, once you pre-purchase BFA, you have access to start doing the quests, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But the issue is the 4 character slots have not been added yet. So if you do complete them, you are still stuck waiting for the 4 new character slots to be added before you can start your leveling journey, unless you want to go and level on a different server once completing those quests. But I'll touch on that in a bit. So back to the Q&A. So Allied Races are here as a result of this. You go, you pre-purchase BFA, you log in. If you have met the requirements, you will get pushed a quest to go to Stormwind or Orgrimmar, depending on your faction, and you will learn about what's required for the Allied Races. Now, speaking from an Alliance point of view, if you want to do the Lightforged Draenei, you need Exalted with Army of the Light. If you want to do the Void Elves, you need to be Exalted with the Argassian Reach. So you log in, you go and do that, and you can start the journey. You do one at a time, and you can do them back to back. That's not an issue. Remember, if you want the Heritage Armor, however, you will need to level that Allied race from level 20 to 110. You can race change once you have unlocked them, however. Now, the Allied race unlocks are account-wide, so the requirements are account-wide as well, which is fantastic. So, if you've played Alliance and you want to go Nightborn, so you've got Exalted on your Alliance toon, you've done all that. If you want to go Nightborn on Horde, which requires Exalted, you do not need to do that rep grind again. You'll simply log over to your Horde toon. You have to unlock the starter experience for Suramar in that campaign and how the Horde come to help, and then you can go with the Nightborn. So that is fantastic news. Around the Allied races and their racials, which have been around for some time, but there was a question in the Q&A about, with each new race that's going to be added, the pool of racial abilities and balancing becomes larger and harder. Is this going to be an issue moving forward? So Ian made mention it is difficult to balance at times, and we've obviously seen issues with that in the past. But over the time, they've been really trying to pull back on the power of racials. So the idea now is that the overall power level of a racial isn't a huge determining factor in what you choose. The only big standout at the moment, which Ian mentioned, which is completely fair enough, is Blood Elf's Racial Arcane Torrent. So this has humongous, obviously, Mythic Plus potential and PvP use. So they're likely to be looking at in 8.0, which is sad face to Blood Elves, but they want racials to be more about flavor than power. Void Elf racial was mentioned. It's not a blink, it's like a slow-moving, pathing, cross, transcendence blink kind of thing. You'll press the button to activate. About run speed, a void form will kind of come out from you. It will path across. When you hit the button again, you will translocate to that place. So it's not as quick as a blink, and it doesn't sort of function like a blink, but it's still a point A to point B ability, but it's not a blink. The question was raised around why Allied Races was locked behind rep, because everyone has this big issue with the rep grind factor at the moment. And the answer made sense. They wanted to introduce new races, and Ian said they wanted to tell a story behind how that race came to join that faction. And that makes perfect sense. They wanted to offer some kind of story into how that race came to join us, rather than collect 10, there you go. Rep is the best associated thing that WoW has into doing that, so I have no issues with that. They're going to continue to look at it in future expansions as more allied races are introduced. Maybe that becomes, you know, it's not in 2 expansions time. To ask someone to go back and get exalted with the Nightborn is just not feasible, so they'll continue to change that, but that's something that they'll continue to look at as they go. Zandalari Trolls, Orcs from Draenor, and Dark Iron Dwarves will not be available till BFA. There is a large story portion locked behind and around Zandalar, so we just have to wait for that for the Trolls. Ian made a good point in regards to the rep lock as well to think about. If allied races had been a feature of Legion, we would have had to play through the Nightborn or the High Mountain storyline to reach Exalted first, help them solve their problems, gain their trust, and then find out which faction they went to before we would have unlocked them anyway. So it's the exact same thing that they're going to be doing moving forward and in BFA. A question was raised around arenas and RBG queuing, and I've seen this a number of times, and even myself, I've sometimes thought, God, this would make it easier, and that's solo queuing. Being able to solo queue into arena 3v3s or RBGs to get mounts, to get achievements, to unlock the Mage Tower variants and things like that. The answer to this one is unlikely. We're probably not going to see it. Ian said this would blur the lines between what rated PvP is, what group composition means, and you know what random matchmaking is. Overwatch was one of the games that was pointed to as an example where you know you can solo queue into rated play and things like that, but Overwatch is completely different because you're able to change your group composition on the fly, whereas Warcraft you don't have that. Your character is your character. You can't change mid-arena and things like that. So you know, they don't have the same amount of flexibility, and they didn't think it would be realistic to be able to offer a matchmaking system that took care of that took care of good queue times, group composition, and a good experience. So we're probably not going to see that form come into game. It also takes away the whole thing that a lot of people whinge about for World of Warcraft, and that's, you know, taking away the social aspect of, you know, forming teams, forming friends, forming tactics and all that kind of stuff, and playing with the same people repeatedly. Ian did say they are trying to make them certainly more accessible though, and communities are obviously going to be a big part of that in BFA, but they're looking at changing the size of rated battlegrounds from 10v10 to 6v6 as we've been seeing in Brawls, and that will make it a hell of a lot easier to tick off those things, gaining 6 people and keeping them together versus keeping 10. They spoke about, and this is a little one that really means nothing to me, but I had no idea it was in game, so I'm just throwing it in here, and that's Arena Spectator mode. This has been in game since 7.2.5. I had no idea. If you /command invite spectator match, you will be able to view the arena matches like they do at BlizzCon in that kind of user interface, and there's add-ons that you can get to assist with it, and it's quite difficult to use apparently, but I just had no idea it was in game, so I thought I would make mention of it. So onto the Prestige system, the Honor talents, moving forward the grind and into BFA. So they spoke about carrying the Prestige system from Legion into BFA, and they acknowledged that the answer isn't just continuing to pile rewards on top of more levels of Prestige ranks. So when a new player comes into the game, they see something like level 60 Prestige or something like that, and they just think, absolutely no way am I going to even bother attempting it to catch up to where I want to be or get where I need to be. They also don't want to undermine all the people that have put so much work into arenas and battlegrounds and things like that to reach their current levels. So in BFA there will be new ranks added, but there's going to be sort of loot crates or titles or currency rewards at the end of those levels, rather than things that you really need to continuously strive for, let's say. The amount of prestige you have or the level of prestige you have will work sort of more towards like the Overwatch system, where it just shows how much PvP you've done, how much you've played, versus getting anything really fantastic for it at this stage. But again, you know, we don't know what will come with BFA. In regards to the honor talents, it's all connected obviously. It was implemented at the same time and it hasn't worked out exactly how they thought it would. It certainly needs an overhaul, they've stated. It's acted now as a barrier to new people entering PvP. So what they're thinking is they will make the trinket choice a level 1 choice where you've got the choice of 3 there, and then from there will be a pool of 6 talents, say, and you will choose 3 of them which you're able to swap in and out, and that will be how the new honor system works. So that sounds really good. From the battleground perspective, Seething Shore will be available before BFA, and there will be some new arena maps coming in as well. They also mentioned around gear in PvP, that the team wants gear to matter in PvP, but not to the point where you have no chance because someone has played or has more gear than you. So the PvP template will be changing slightly. They don't want people who are 50 item levels higher to have a huge distinct advantage against someone who is lower item level. They want people to have a fighting chance in PvP. So we will see changes coming to the PvP template. In regards to world PvP and how this will work, you will still toggle it on and off as the announcement at BlizzCon was done. When you toggle that PvP mode on, you will be put into a PvP enabled version of the world that you're currently in with other people who have toggled that function on. Obviously you won't all be on the one server as it would crash, but what they're going to do with the sharding and things like that is they're going to be able to skew faction balance a lot better, and I really hope this works like they're saying. So if you're playing on an alliance dominated PvP server and you toggle PvP on, it doesn't mean that you'll be put into a PvP realm where you can just, you know, grossly outnumber Horde or whatnot. They're going to be able to hopefully match up the faction balances, so you might go to an even balanced number of Horde on that realm, which you're not used to seeing, to have real PvP options. The only exception to this rule will be RP servers, so when you enable PvP mode on an RP realm, you will still follow RP rules and won't automatically be put onto a shard with other realmed players, but everyone can still opt in to PvP. So moving away from sort of PvP now and towards the islands, which even still have a PvP element, but anyway, islands and rewards in BFA, they don't really have a hell of a lot on this yet, so they're still figuring out what they're going to do and reward with islands. They will be, they've said, a lucrative source of Azurite though, and powerful gear will probably come from rewards, obviously scaling in difficulty that you complete on, but they didn't really have a lot around that yet. Warfronts were mentioned, heavily inspired by the RTS elements, obviously from Warcraft 2 and 3, but will not play out in the same way. So you will still need to upgrade buildings and get resources, but it's going to be in an MMO wrapper. So best way to describe it, they said, was imagine Warcraft 3, where you're playing on the map as the hero on that map. So that is pretty much how this is going to work. Moving on to pretty much the largest portion of this, which is based around classes and some of the changes we're going to see there. So it was mentioned that they wanted to return a lot of class and spec specific benefits and abilities back to the game at the dev water cooler. So the question was raised about how this is going to be balanced to avoid class stacking in BFA, which we've seen in the past, and avoiding that, you know, we need to bring the class, not the player mentality. So I have to admit, I loved the answer from Ian, and that was sometimes we're not going to be able to balance it. Sometimes you should bring the class, and I think that's great. So compelling reasons to bring the class, you know, this will hopefully give a larger diversity to class composition. So they want to get rid of one class being able to do, say, 90% of the things you need in a group in BFA. So they're hoping there'll be more choice and more thought that goes into putting together groups, and that will mean sometimes that other classes are required, and I've got no doubt that there will still end up being cookie cutter builds and things like that for dungeons, but hopefully this will lead to more choice. And I don't think it's going to have any dramatic effect on if you're getting declined now versus being accepted into groups now. You know, I think what they're really hoping for is that each class will bring something that is useful to each scenario, but you know, in certain cases you will have a harder time doing it without, say, one specific class. They feel class identity doesn't matter as much now as it used to. What really matters now is just how much DPS you do, or what the perceived top spec for a class is, and that's what they're really looking to change. They spoke about class-wide utility. So they think the team has prioritized spec identity over class identity in the Legion development, and that's, you know, they make a fair point around this. What they want to have is there should be more class-wide strength rather than, you know, spec-specific things. So, you know, rather than being a sub-rogue or a pirate rogue, you know, you should just be a rogue, and you should have everything that comes with being a rogue. Same as a fire mage versus an arcane mage. You should be a mage. So there obviously are some limits, you know, with raid-wide healing abilities and things like that, but you know, they want core functionality abilities that belong, you know, to specific specs to maybe be able to available to that class. Say maybe a death grip or something like that, or even a mass grip. Mass grip maybe should belong to all death knights rather than just blood, which would be redonkulous for dungeons. But you know, we'll just see what happens with that. But that sounds like a really good change that's possibly coming in regards to class fantasy versus being so narrow-minded around spec fantasy. With artifacts going away, the question was raised, well, how will our classes be kept interesting and balanced moving forward? Ian basically said that in Legion, classes were redesigned and then artifacts were layered on top of them. It wasn't sort of an amalgamation or the other way around. Tuning was done with the artifact in mind, though, of course, but they weren't as intertwined as possibly everyone thinks. So there is a core set of abilities and tools that a class has, and then there are some you get from other sources, like racials, artifacts, set bonuses, trinkets, and things like that. The Azurite Armor is where this is going to live in BFA. So there'll be 3 pieces of Azurite Armor that you are going to be able to customize your toon with. Some artifact traits may find their way there. It won't be a one-for-one copy though. And some other abilities may find their way into the talent trees, they've said. If a spec's rotation only works well due to its artifact ability, then that's a gap that will need to be filled, obviously, they've said. And with Azurite Armor, you will have more frequent changes and customization than you do, or than we actually do at the moment with our artifacts. So, you know, with the artifact, once you unlocked it all, you just forgot about it. They're hoping Azurite Armor sort of doesn't flow on that same way. It was never about either giving us 20 new passives that we're going to see carry forth into BFA. It was something that was specific to the Legion expansion that will be left behind. So we will see certain things come forward with us, but don't expect to be seeing everything coming through into BFA. One class they did mention is getting a major overhaul will be Survival Hunter, so this is one of the things that they feel they really lost the plot on. They think it's where spec fantasy was put well before class fantasy. So you hit 110 as a hunter, you were using a bow, and then you pick survival, and all of a sudden you forgot how to use a bow. So it felt like there was 2 different classes rather than being different sides to the same class. So the new survival is setting out to have a much more balanced approach to melee and ranged attacking, and that'll be interesting to see how that goes. Titan forged weapons were brought up in BFA, so obviously we're losing our artifact weapons and we will be farming out weapons again, which brought up the question around Titan forging and war forging. So they pretty much said that the Titan forging system averages out in the long run. A player that only runs LFR, you know, may end up, a player that only runs LFR may end up with 1 powerful item, but the rest of their gear is going to be LFR generally. Weapon slots matter more though, so the current thinking is to not let weapons Titan forge, they'll only let them Warforge, and this is the current thinking at this stage. The Azurite Armor slots, the 3 pieces of armor, will not be able to Titan forge or Warforge, so the Mythic Raiders, they will still hold the power in regards to having the most powerful gear slot opportunities there, showing, I suppose, the commitment that it takes to get that gear. And that's, you know, that's fair enough. I have no issues with that. There has to be some reward, which kind of lost its way in Legion for doing that content. They also said around Warforging and Titan forging the Azurite armor pieces, they're complex enough already as it is without throwing Warforging and Titan forging into the mix. So that's why, another reason they won't be Warforging and Titan forging. So that was pretty much it from the Q&A, guys, and hopefully I've covered it all off in an interesting enough manner from that. I watched it all this morning and just wanted to get a video out about it. The last thing I want to talk about is the allied races. So as I mentioned, you pre-order BFA, you log in and you get your quest, and you can start through the journey for the allied races. Now I've completed so far the Void Elf and the Lightforged Space Goats, and I think they did a really good job. So the Void Elf and the Lightforged scenarios, they're both quite quick. And the story's, you know, quite good in them. I didn't think that there was no eye roll moments or oh my god with this hurry up. It was quite quick to get through. You get your 2 new mounts, obviously completing the Void Elf and the Lightforged side of things. I really did enjoy the Void Elf story probably the most, and that's probably largely because it's Void Elves, and you know I really want to make my monk a Void Elf. The Lightforged one, I don't have as much interest in Space Goats, so I will be 100% up front there. So I didn't mind it. I can't even remember the guy that you meet at the start that you assist through the Lightforged campaign, but straight away what came to my mind was that this is like Warcraft's Jar Jar Binks. However, he changed as that went through, and I didn't hate him at the end, so it's not all as bad as it seems. But they're not a huge effort to unlock. So we're just waiting on the character slots now to become available, as I've got 12 characters on my server. So I'm just waiting for the 4 slots to become available so I can start leveling, as I really don't want to level on another server just while I'm waiting for this. So keen to hear your thoughts anyway, guys. Did you watch the Q&A? Have you started the leveling process for the allied races? What class are you going to choose? What race are you going to go? Let me know in the comments, guys. Thanks very much for checking out the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. See you guys.